Good morning. Welcome to Beyond the SEAF model. I'm Jack Kosar. This is effective for the week of February 23rd, 2026. Let's get started. SEAF signals for this week. We retain energy and industrials. A little bit of a flip-flop on the trading week with industrials coming in 1 and energy coming in 2. This nice tight scores here at 4 and 5 for our top 2 picks. And the materials jumps in here at the 3rd pick for this week with a strong tactical month and strategic quarter. Do see, obviously a little bit of strength here up here the trading week, but not in the top 5 or just outside the top. So things looking good here for industrials and energies materials. What the SEAF model is kind of doing here is we have a handful of sectors that we're attempting to find what's going to pair best with our top 2 energy and industrials. Those have been rock solid and strong, and just kind of rotating a little bit through. We had staples at one point, healthcare, and now we're in materials, just trying to find that next sector that's going to potentially take over for the top 2, but really showing some strength there in those. Yeah, this is what I'm talking about. Here's our heat map. Like I said, real strength here in energy and industrials. Got some good numbers, 0.25s to 0.22s on the trading week. And overall up week in terms of our assets under management. If you can see here, we have made this a little bit bigger this week in terms of trying to show the grander scheme of what's going on. But we have, kind of still above that 21-day moving average. Now we're a bit sideways here in the S&P 500, but really haven't had any kind of a major correction since dropping below the 21-day moving averages. So this thing still technically has room to run as we have assets still kind of flowing out or flowing into the sector spiders overall, approaching all-time highs of $360 billion for the 11 sector spiders. And again, just kind of wanted to highlight here, we see real estate kind of starting to kind of trend in the right direction. Obviously, this is a light green, so this isn't something that's, really that we're focusing on, but just kind of keep an eye on. I think we're going to highlight that in a rainbow chart in a minute. Seeing that positive skew for utilities as well. And financials got a little bit of that reverse. We're going from pinkish to dark red here for being in that final. Heading into our rainbow charts, we got materials up first. So materials has had a nice little run of relative outperformance versus SPY. Hasn't been blowing it out of the water in terms of the SEAF, the overall SEAF score, but we have maintained a favored score for materials, really going back to December of last year. Little touches here in the on this daily chart, just as a reminder, our SEAF model, our rainbow charts. Up top here is a daily SEAF ranking score. So this isn't necessarily how it ends on the week, but how it is on the day-to-day. So we can kind of track how those individual flows are negotiating that SEAF score. And then on the bottom here, we have a relative outperformance or underperformance versus SPY here. So this is materials, relative performance to SPY. Obviously, we've seen some nice strength, especially as we have crossed over into that favorite and stayed there. So, materials looks to be a good place to be here for one of our SEAF picks here. Industrials remain strong up here toward the top. This is the highest score industrials has had for a couple of weeks. His energy was really taking the charge here, but overall score of 5 on the industrials. Really been sitting in favor for much of this time. We had that brief interlude into neutral, which was a bit of a correction here as we were negotiating resistance on the relative outperformance chart, but really has taken off since then. Asset flow looks strong in industrials 3 time periods. First on the trading week this week, so industrials continues to be a good place to be. Same thing for energy. Energy took obviously a 1 point back here as industrials took over on the trading week for the score, but overall ranking score of 4, which is great. The top ranking you can get is 3. And again, as we accelerate out of neutral into favored, and have really kind of held up near that top spot, and we've gotten paid for it. This is a really strong relative outperformance versus SPY. Very big, strong trend line, continues to be seemingly pointing in the right direction. Energy, a great place to be. Financials. I always like to highlight both sides of this model. As we've kind of negotiated this avoid down in favor back into avoid, really broken down into the relative underperformance versus SPY. And this continues a trend for financials. Financials has been on a downtrend in terms of its relative performance, really going back to March of last year. Obviously, reef interludes going into favored. You pick up those little upward trends relative outperformance, but the overall downtrend and a majority of the time spent going back this last year has been in that avoid area, and you can see what has happened. It's a negative ranking or a negative sloping relative performance chart here. Last but somewhat in the middle, just kind of wanted to highlight here real estate. Real estate's been kind of really negotiating that that neutral for much of the past year. Brief interludes touching into that favored ranking. We are trending in the right direction. And the reason I brought this up is I like to see these scores start to trend up. And what you get is this nice, you get this nice upward trending SEAF ranking score as we're going from avoid to neutral, potentially into favored. That picks up some relative performance during that move as assets are coming, letting this thing flow. This thing did bottom out here. It looks like we touched that bottom, so we do have a little bit of support at resistance here. We got touches around October, December, and January in terms of having this relative bottom. So a little bit of acceleration of relative performance off that bottom. It'll take some stronger flows. As I kind of mentioned here, this thing, real estate number 4 on the trading week, but look at the overall color. That's pretty muted, meaning those flows aren't extremely strong, but they are positive. So we will need some, darker green in that trading week in order to really get this thing to accelerate, get up into that favored. But as of right now, just a place to keep an eye on. This isn't necessarily a lead off or anything, but just the sector that I thought the chart looked interesting, and especially in the way that came out of avoid up into neutral and is now knocking on the door for favored. So we'll see you next week what those flows look like. That is all I have for this week. I look forward to breaking the SEAF model down with you all next week, and thank you.